You ever get fined for parking your own car in your own driveway? Then end up owning the entire neighborhood just to shut the HOA up? Yeah, that happened. One minute, I'm working on my old pickup in peace. Next thing I know, I'm standing in front of the HOA president and calmly telling her the ground her house sits on, it's mine now. My name's Jack Palmer. I don't start fights, but I finish them. I'd just bought a modest house in a so-called upscale community called Silver Pine Meadows. It sounded like the kind of place where you sip coffee on the porch, maybe pull a few weeds, live quiet. That fantasy lasted exactly 3 weeks. Enter Meredith Blanchard. Think Chanel perfume meets dictator in yoga pants. HOA president. Self-declared guardian of lawn heights and mailbox paint shades. And apparently, she hated my truck. I've got 2 vehicles, one sensible sedan and one classic pickup I'm slowly restoring. Parked clean, not a speck on the street, and always on my property. First notice came in a neat little envelope. Passive-aggressive font and all. Community standards, this. Vehicle visibility, that. I laughed. Figured it was just some cookie-cutter warning they send to all new folks. So I tightened the tarp over my truck and moved on. A week later, bam, another letter. This time, $100 fine for excessive vehicles. Now, I might not be Einstein, but 2 cars. Doesn't sound excessive to me. Especially when Meredith had a 3-car lineup, a white Escalade with BLN car D1 plates, her husband's obnoxious muscle car, and some sedan I swear was for their poodle. So, I figured, let's be adults. I caught her doing her daily patrol around the neighborhood, rolling slow in her Escalade, judging lawns through a 3-inch window gap. I flagged her down and said, "Hey, just wondering about these notices. Got 2 cars, both parked properly." She lowered her shades and said, "I kid you not, the rules, Mr. Palmer, are for those who need them." Then rolled up the window. That was the moment I knew. This wasn't about cars. It was about control. And if there's one thing I can't stand, it's petty tyrants with too much free time. The fines kept coming. 100 for cars, 50 for grass, half an inch too tall. Right before my landscaping service. 75 for setting my trash bins out at 7 p.m. instead of 6 a.m. All with notes, usually handwritten, signed warmly, Meredith. It wasn't warm. It was war. But see, I'm not just a guy who loves old trucks. I spent 20 years in corporate finance, specializing in acquisitions and hostile takeovers. I know contracts. I know pressure points. And I know how to outmaneuver people who think they're untouchable. So I started digging. Not out of spite. Well, maybe a little. But mostly because I knew something didn't smell right. That's when I found it. The land. See, in Silver Pine Meadows, the homeowners don't actually own the land. They lease it. 99-year leases under a company called Silver Pine Holdings, LLC. And guess who owns Silver Pine Holdings? Some sleepy out-of-state trust company that barely knew it existed. It clicked. If I controlled the land, I controlled the HOA. I could fire the whole damn board. And with Meredith stomping around like she owned the world, I started thinking, maybe it's time someone showed her who really did. I called up my old lawyer, Ben, and we created a shell company, Clearview Valley LLC. Quiet, professional, clean. Through that, Ben started talking to the trust manager. a guy named Abernathy who seemed more interested in his golf swing than this asset. Music to my ears. At the same time, I launched a second front, started buying homes in the neighborhood, through a different LLC, Sunridge Renewal Group. I made generous offers to anyone tired of Meredith's nonsense. First to bite, Mrs. Gable, the sweet widow who got fined for garden gnomes. "Give her hell," she said, handing me the keys. I smiled. "Oh, I will." Weeks turned into months. I bought 7 properties and finally closed the deal on Silver Pine Holdings. On paper, Clearview Valley LLC now owned all the land, every lawn, every flower bed, every square inch of HOA territory. Meredith still had no idea, and I waited. Then came the HOA meeting. I arrived fashionably late. Meredith was mid-rant about Christmas light policies, perched on her chair like a bored monarch. I walked in, calm as you please, and said, "Karen, sorry, Meredith. Maybe you want to open your mail before we discuss tinsel." She blinked, confused, opened the envelope, and turned white. Her hand shook. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. I stepped forward. "That letter's from my company. You'll see we're now the official landowner, which means, under the master agreement you clearly never bothered reading, I now have a seat on this board." Nodder looked ready to faint. Shrugger actually seemed impressed. The room went silent. Meredith stared at me like she'd seen a ghost. I said, "Let's get to the real business. A vote of no confidence in the current president and treasurer." With 7 property votes and a few residents emboldened by the chaos, it passed. Overwhelmingly. She stood up, red-faced. "This is outrageous. You can't just buy the neighborhood." "Oh, but I did." She sputtered, "I'll sue." "My lawyer would love that." "Sis." Ben, who'd been sitting quietly in the back, just gave her a polite wave. But I wasn't done. Turns out, those lease agreements? They have renewal clauses and violations, like abusing power, mismanaging funds, or creating a hostile community, can be grounds for non-renewal. So I handed non-renewal notices to Meredith, her husband, and her cronies. They could sell their homes to my LLC, or hire cranes and dig those houses off my land. Most took the buyout, quietly. One even thanked me. Meredith, of course, fought it, ranted, threatened, tried everything. Eventually, her legal fees piled up, and she sold, for less than my original offer. Watching her Escalade pull out one last time felt like turning the final page of a long, ridiculous book. After that, things changed. I didn't keep the power for long. I restructured the HOA, brought in a new fair board, rewrote the bylaws with actual logic, cut the fees, and sold off the houses one by one. Made a tidy profit, sure, but more importantly, peace returned. You know what's funny? All I ever wanted was to work on my truck without being harassed. And now I do. So, who really ran the neighborhood? Who do you think?